Hey, what's up, y'all? This video is part of Apex Reactions. Go ahead and check it out. Let us know what you think. And check out the actual video on the YouTube page, Apex Reactions. I'll put a link down below. Enjoy. Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to the first of many episodes of Apex Reactions. You're asking yourself, what the hell is this? Who are these four guys, and why does it matter? Well, Apex Reactions is what it sounds like. It's all about racing, sim racing, post-race, pre-race, what we think of what's coming up, what we think there's valuable insight, and what we think is value to you. So, you guys may know me. I have a website or channel, Grayze Dynamics. What I've done is I've got three of my best buds together so we can put something totally separate together, something totally fun, and something that we've been wanting to do as a team for a while. So, I'm going to go ahead and introduce them one by one. They'll give you a little breakdown of themselves, and then we'll get straight to it. So first, I'm going to start with James, my guy, Big Natty. Let us know who you are and what we're going to do.
I'm James, nickname Big Natty. Cincinnati, Ohio is where I reside. Sim racing for about 3 years now. Been a long time racing fan of like Formula One, IndyCar. For a very long time. Used to be a stock car fan, not really a NASCAR fan, so I'm kind of old school like that, but yeah, that's kind of me in a nutshell.
Thanks my guy, Big Natty. Next, my guy, Steven. He's going to be the NASCAR guy, I'm going to tell you right now. But Steven, go and introduce yourself, let us know where you hail from and what you got.
Yeah, like Ray said, I'm Steve. I hail from about an hour south of Chicago, lovely state of Illinois. About 20 minutes from Chicagoland Speedway. I've grown up around short tracks. I got a short track probably about half hour from me, not even. Big time NASCAR. Always kind of been a NASCAR fan. My grandpa was in NASCAR big time, so that's where a lot of that stems from. But honestly, I'm a motorsport fan. That's what it comes down to. I will watch anything. It doesn't matter if it's 2 wheels, 4 wheels. I'll watch it. If they're racing lawnmowers somewhere, I'll watch it. There ain't no joke. If there ain't nothing else on, that's what we're going. Snow. I mean, I've watched the snow crosses. Like it is what it is. Supercross, snowcross. Formula One, IndyCar, NASCAR, Cars Tour. But when it all comes down to it. Like I said, if it's got wheels on it and there's a competition, money to be made, I'm watching it.
Nice. My guy, Steven. Lastly, but not least, my guy, Neil. Introduce yourself, let us know where you're from and what you're all about, brother.
What's going on, man? As you said, Neil, a.k.a. Rude Boy from New York. Started watching racing around, I want to say around the 2000s. I was deployed and got much to do, so watched it, and I ended up falling in love with racing. Started sim racing about in COVID, so that's what 2020 really got into it. So I'm looking forward to put my input in some of these conversations we'll be having, because I'm a Hamilton fan and I love Lewis Hamilton. That's my last name, Hamilton. So I'm biased towards him, so just let you guys know from now.
Well, he's biased towards Lewis, and you guys know me. I'm a Lewis Hamilton fan, but I try and be objective.
Same here. So I'm a fan of a lot of the drivers. I think at the end of the day,
exactly.
No objective here.
But yeah, so my name is Ray. You guys know me from Grayze Dynamics. I am living in the great old state of Ohio now, originally from New York myself. Sim racing is, 2021 COVID. I mean, like many though, I played racing games on my controller, PS5, PS4, way back to PS1, first Gran Turismo, so I've always loved racing. Watched racing as a kid for a little bit, but I'm a football fan and kind of got out of that and moved over into just playing video games, and then, caught the racing bug and have been watching IMSA and started watching a little bit of NASCAR and IndyCar and F1 and all those things. So this podcast or video is going to be all about that, all about anything racing, video games, racing series and so forth. So let's get it started. Let's not waste any time. We all watched F1 this past weekend, and I'm going to start with you, Steven, and I want to get your insight on this first. What was your first reactions after the race? What did you think of the race?
Finally had a different winner. Different color car won. That makes it exciting right off the gate, don't it? I mean, come on.
Yes.
All of a sudden, we don't know who's going to win.
Right.
I think that's what we all said.
I mean, there you go. No, I think, obviously you don't want to see it happen because of a failure like that, right? Especially that early on.
Right.
But on the other hand, I think it added something to the race because all of a sudden it was like, okay, somebody that's going to finish 20 seconds out in front is no longer there, and it opens up the rest of the field. And I think you had a few pretty good, battles throughout the midfield. George and George Russell and Fernando Alonso, running. I mean, they had a hell of a battle up until the end as well. I still not too sure about that penalty, but it is what it is. But no, I think in general there was more entertainment. I think because there was actually the whole who knows who's going to actually win here. Even though Carlos was way out was out in front, it still had what was going to happen between second through fourth, or could something screw up.
Yeah, and at one point, Leclerc was actually starting to catch Carlos. So,
yeah,
he did.
Nice.
You're right, Natty.
He started catching him, but that tire strategy kind of helped him out there too.
Exactly.
That's the thing with Carlos. I gotta give it to him. He is a very good strategist. He's very good.
Yeah, he's a thinking driver.
His team played their cards correct.
Yeah.
So piggybacking on that, now that we've watched Carlos Sainz show his value to the team, and now granted, this doesn't happen every weekend. It's only the third race of the season. There's a lot of racing to be had here moving forward. 20 some odd races left, so I mean it's still
21.
a lot of racing to be done. 24 races, right? So 21 races left in this season. So yes, it was nice to see Max not be up front running away with it 20 seconds later. Although it looked like Carlos was going to give him a run for his money regardless. That Ferrari was fast and Carlos was kicking on all cylinders. James, with Carlos leaving, okay? Carlos is leaving now. He's on his way out. Lewis is coming in. Is there motivation for him to still be the team player? Or do you think he's just going to beat to the tune of his own drum?
I think he still has to show that he's a team player, because if he's not, no one else is going to want him. Okay? But I also think he is writing his resume right now. You know what I'm saying? This is my swan song, right? My last year Ferrari, and I'm giving it all the beans. I'm going to do whatever I got to do to put my best foot forward and do the best I can, because personally, if Lewis has got to leave Mercedes, which breaks my heart, I'd rather see Carlos in that seat.
Okay. Oh, so you'd rather see Carlos. Okay. Neil, what about you? Carlos, where you see him going? What's your prediction?
My prediction, where Carlos could go, tell the truth, if he does extremely well this season, which I think he will, because as Natty said, he's riding his resume, and it started off pretty strong. If it wasn't for him getting sick, he would have probably got another second place, because he's whooping Leclerc's behind. I'm sorry, but he is. He's putting his foot way up his backside. He might end up in Mercedes seat. I mean, given his talents and his pedigree, because his father raced, it's a lot of training from his parents. His father wasn't a bad racer.
His dad just came in second. What was it, last week? 2 weeks ago. His dad's still racing.
Yeah, that's
he does off-road. It was like the car or something like that in off-road. Yeah, I know he did. So, with all of that still giving him, I mean, come on now. What? It's like a no-brainer. Who else could possibly fill Hamilton's seat in the grid right now? Because there's nobody to pick from coming up.
Right. I think, and honestly, the only seat that I see that's in jeopardy is Logan's. I don't know if he'd want to go to Williams.
Well, see, if I had to pick, this is just my take on it. I see Carlos back at Red Bull. People forget, and I think Steve was kind of saying that earlier, that, remember, Carlos was at Red Bull. Let's not forget where his roots are. Yeah. So if Carlos becomes a world beater and he becomes a hot commodity, well, I don't necessarily know they take Yuki. Yuki's good, but he's not Carlos.
Right.
I don't think Daniel's getting that seat, because we're going to get on Daniel in just a second. Yeah. But I don't think Daniel's going to get that seat. Liam's going to be at Alpha or Racing Bull, whatever it is. So I think Carlos more likely heads to Red Bull over Mercedes, because I think he has ties there, and I think it's more of a natural fit. He knows Christian, he knows the atmosphere, and he fits it well. And I know Steven wanted to say something regarding that, because he's been chomping at the bit. So you want to chime in there?
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, look at the car. Why wouldn't you want to take that opportunity if you got it?
Right.
And the best thing I think Carlos can do is be Ferrari's own worst enemy in the best way possible. Win out. Do your thing and show why you should still be in that seat. And then move on to the next team and punish Ferrari for it.
Right. But here's the thing that we also got to look at, though, Steven, is we know one thing about Red Bull: they are a one driver centric team versus like a Mercedes team. Like you said, their cars are pretty much, they try to equalize their cars. They're not trying to build a car just for one person. You know what I'm saying? Because think about every teammate that Max has had, they've all had problems with that car because the car's not built to suit both of them. It's only built to suit Max. And I would hate to see Carlos go to Red Bull, even though, like I said, it's something familiar. I would hate to see him go there and then struggle because they put him in a car that he just can't fool with.
Do you think he would struggle, or do you think he would go there with the mindset, I can handle anything? Because if I'm an arrogant driver, I'm saying, you put me in a car, I'll figure it out. And I think Carlos, if he has a successful season this season, if he goes out and he shows everybody why he should still be at Ferrari and Lewis should be staying at Mercedes, and he shows his value, if I'm him and I'm arrogant enough, I'm thinking, well, put me in that seat next to Max. I raced there before. I was good there. I left, went somewhere else, showed him I was good. I went to Ferrari, showed him I was still good. Now, granted, each and every time I left for a better he left for a better opportunity. If you think about it, he left Alpha for McLaren. He left McLaren for Ferrari. And if Red Bull comes knocking and Mercedes comes knocking, and he's really that hot of a commodity, I go straight to Red Bull, because I think, well, everywhere I've went, I've gotten better. Everywhere I've been, I've done well. Why not? Now, granted, this one is not going to be his decision as to why he's leaving.
Right.
But still, like I said, arrogant driver, I could see him thinking that.
Yeah, and I can, like I said, I can understand the arrogance. Like I said, I see that part of it. But again, like I said, I'm also thinking I got to look at the history of what's going on with that team too. Like I said, we've seen too many. Last couple of years, poor Checo has been right there neck and neck with Max at the very couple of beginning of couple of races at the beginning of the season, and then all of a sudden, as they start to tune that car more and more for Max, you see Checo drop further away from him. You know what I mean?
Further away,
and I would hate it. Like I said, I would just hate, like I said, with the interview that Alex did. Even he said it's like playing with a controller on the highest sensitivity.
Right.
So if that's something that Carlos isn't used to or really don't want to fool with, mentally, I don't know. I don't want to see the guy struggle. I just think personally, I just think, again, this is my opinion, I think his best route will be Mercedes.
Okay.
I think he can shine better at Mercedes than he would be at Red Bull.
Okay. Now, Natty's saying he could shine. Let me pose this question first before you. So, the W15 is what they're on now, right? W15. Trash. Utter trash.
Yes. Yes.
Right. I mean, like, you take that car, you fold that junk up with the last 2 cars they built, you throw it right in the trash, and you start over. If I'm Carlos, do I go to a proven commodity right now for next year, if I have the option, in Red Bull, or a car that I compete for 3rd place, and I mean 3rd place in the constructors, compete for 3rd place, meaning I'm not guaranteed 3rd place, or I go to Red Bull, and maybe I don't compete with Max as much, but I'm still competing for wins, and I'm still competing for a constructor's title.
Yeah,
and it could be his best finish in an F1 season ever at P2.
And the sad part is, though, it could only be a one and done season because of the new regs. You know what I mean?
But we don't know.
Yeah, exactly. We don't know.
Right.
But I'm just saying. I mean, it's all a gamble, no matter what he does.
Right.
Because, like I said, Mercedes is crap now, but if they, like I said, even last year, as dog crap as the car was, as the year went on, they made the car better.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So who's to say how that car is going to perform before the end of the year?
No.
We don't know.
Well, the rest of the season we'll know, but it's a crapshoot right now. It's utter
a crapshoot.
garbage. So But yeah, Neil, go ahead and say what you got to say, brother.
I mean, all of you guys made some very strong points. Very strong points. But we all sat here and watched Carlos race for years. And given his personality, do we think that he is going to sit there, right, and play second fiddle for anybody? Because when they were choosing Leclerc over him, he proved to them that I am still better than him. Even last year, I'm better than him. I'm the only one that won. What are you doing? And they still chose Leclerc over him. The year before was the same thing. Come on. Now you're saying that the guy should go to Red Bull, right? To go to Red Bull, and he knows what the culture is. As Natty said, it's a one-horse show. It's not both of them. And this is what they do with every single driver that comes in. Would it be Seb? Would it be Danny Rick? It doesn't matter whoever that step up, and that's their guy. That's their guy. Even if you're better, that's their guy. And that's how Red Bull is.
And I think that's going to happen.
But the question I wanted to pose, give me 1 second. Is Carlos the guy that's going to say, okay, I'm going to just sit back and just take second place? That's the question for all of that. Is he, given his personality over the years, is he that guy to sit down and take second place?
I see. No, I don't think if he goes to Red Bull, he sits back and he takes second place. I think he fights and he pushes and he tries to maximize everything. But you know what? We'll figure that out. I want to move on to the next subject here. So, thinking about it.
I know this could be all night.
Exactly. Fernando Alonso.
Sorry.
Okay? Fernando Alonso. Okay? He causes an incident, and Steven, you brought it up, so we can go to you first. Does he cause the incident, or is that just racecraft and Georgia's not prepared for it? Because part of me thinks, and this is just before we get to you, Steven, part of me thinks it's a combination of both. Like, could it have been risky? Yeah. I mean, clearly there's risk to everything. You're driving at almost 200 miles an hour. But if that had been Lewis or Seb or Max or somebody else, I feel like they would have adapted to that and played the game better. We've seen other drivers play the game better in the long run. So I'm wondering if at the end of the day that would have been played better. So it looks like Steven stepped away for a hot second. So we know he'll be back.
The only thing I can remember, like if you think about, was it Singapore or Jeddah when Max kind of brake checked Lewis. I mean, Lewis did swerve. I mean, unfortunately, he did clip his front wing, but you got to remember with Formula One, their whole biggest thing is safety. They try to promote safety so much. So to me, even though it may be part of racecraft, doing something like that is inherently dangerous. So I can see why they would have given him a penalty. You know, that's just one side of the coin. Yeah.
Right. I think we can all see why. But I think the difference between, how do I say this? between Max and Fernando. Max's was on a straight.
Right.
Like there wasn't a point you would anticipate he's slowing down. Fernando was slowing down. You know what I mean? Like he slowed down a little bit sooner, but like it was a corner coming up. So, but yeah, like I said, race guy. What do you think, Steven?
My thing is, like you said, they're in a corner, they're slowing down. Here's the thing, is how many times do you see them kind of backing corners up a little bit more to force dirty air? Now, how many times do they result in a wreck like that? Not too many, but does it affect the car behind? 100%. But you see it happen more often than you realize. It's just a matter of this one resulted in the fact that he went in too hot and he ended up in that massive wreck. I think that's kind of where it's at. Did it necessarily mean he gets a 20-second penalty? I don't know. I mean, they looked at the data, and that's what they went off of. I mean, it is what it is there. But to me, you see that happen all the time. Just you don't see somebody wreck out. That's what the outlier is. That's the difference. Is he wrecked? But did that necessarily cause it? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either. And as much as I'm not a Fernando fan at all, you know, my thing is the FIA needs to be more consistent when it comes to their rulings across the board. You know, we've seen over the last few years, ever since 2021, they have been just
erratic,
dumb as hell with some of their rulings. Like, what? You know, one person does an infraction and they get a 10-second penalty. Someone else does the same infraction and they get a 5-second. It's like, come on, man, you need consistency. So if you know, like I said, so if they're going to penalize, you know, Fernando for that, then they're going to need to start taking a closer look at that and start penalizing more people. You got to start being consistent. You know what I mean? So yeah, I mean, is it unfair? Like I said, they did their ruling. It is what it is. Was it unfair? I don't know, but. My thing is, if they're going to rule off of that, then they need to start saying, okay, well, you know what, this could be kind of dangerous. Maybe we need to take a closer look going forward at this, you know, type of you know, strategy that some of the drivers may employ during a race, and start penalizing people accordingly. That's all I'm saying.
No, for sure.
I think that's something that kind of across all sport. NASCAR's the same way. The rulings are inconsistent. I mean, kind of back on the F1 though. You look at, what was it, Jeddah, where was it Norris had the jump start, nothing, and then they were handing out 10-second penalties for little, you know, minor things, and it's like, well, how do you justify it? You need to be able to justify it.
And they try to justify it because they said the GPS system or whatever, the tracking system, didn't register a false start, but every billion eyeballs saw that it was a false start. What are you talking about?
Yeah, millions of people saw a false start.
And I got my little man crush on Lando. I love Lando. The man deserved a penalty. I'm sorry.
He does. He did.
I'm sorry.
So, thinking about penalties, and this is where, like what you said, Steven, about it happens more often than not, and we have to move from the result and look at what the actual infraction was. It brings me back to 2021, the Lewis-Max battle for the chip, and how they routinely just were in each other's throats. And remember, at Silverstone, Lewis takes the inside. Lewis just taps the wheel of Max, but at that speed sends Max flying off and hits wall. He gets a 10-second penalty.
You need to flip that, and reverse it. Flip it, reverse it, because Max did come across. So,
but even if he came across, it still was a tap, and it was a penalty. Like, I mean, I mean, either way you look at it, regardless of what side you're on, a penalty was given to Lewis. And at that point in time, I get why the penalty was applied. And what they did, what I like, was they said it's not based on the result. It was a 10-second penalty for causing an accident or an incident. And the reason I enjoyed that, because they didn't look at the end and say what happened and say, well, we're going to give you a 45-second penalty in a drive-through and you're going to lose license points. Because the result doesn't matter, because you could make that mistake 100 times, and of those 100 times, you may not end up with that result. It may be a 360 spin. It may be a tap and a wiggle of the back end. So it just depends on how it happens. But to your point, Steven, we want to make sure, and Natty, be consistent. You give Lando a penalty for forcing somebody wide, but then you don't give Max a penalty for forcing somebody wide. But then you give Lewis a penalty for running somebody off the track, but then you don't, like, we've got to be consistent, and it's got to be, if you run somebody off the track and you push them wide of the line, it's this type of penalty. It's a warning the first time, it's a penalty the second. Because, as we know with F1, dirty air is so critical. When I finally get past you, you can't force me wide, because then I may not ever get another chance because of the type of racing in F1 or other races. So, Neil, but I know you had something to say, Neil. Go ahead and say what you need to say.
No, it's the most, it's worse. I started watching NASCAR, and it's the same thing with the rulings. F1 is the same ruling. I think it's a sports across the board. We're not talking about all sports. I know we're talking about F1. But I've never seen a set of guys that sometimes when they make their ruling, it just seems so corrupt. It seems one-sided. Right. I'm not trying to say anything crazy, but come on. Please, just like you said, make the rule, stick to it.
Right.
Just stick to it.
Yeah, it seems, the rules seem to, like, they have an agenda at times. So, but last but not least, before we get to that, we move forward, at least with F1. Danny Rick.
Oh, man,
Danny
my boy.
Ricardo. Okay? Mr. Grin. Mr. Smiles all the damn time.
Mr. riding in on a horse. Riding in on a horse.
So let Danny Rick alone, man.
But let's go through, because I'm going to start with Steven first again on this one. But let's go through the timeline of what happened. Danny Rick, he's at Red Bull, okay? Max comes in. This kid is fast. Let's be honest. Max comes into Red Bull. Danny's already there. Seb's moved on to greener pastures at Ferrari. Danny Rick's probably thinking it's my team. It's me for the taking. I got this. I'm the big dog. Max comes in quickly, shows, nah, bruh. Like, this is me.
It.
Right. And I'm a Lewis Hamilton fan, but Max is a generational talent. There's no denying that kid's skill set. He is phenomenal at his craft. He's the next great one, and you have to give him his due. Danny, as it said on Drive to Survive, ran from a fight. Went to McLaren. No, went to Alpine, actually. Went to Alpine first.
Renault.
Went to Renault. Yeah, it was Renault, became Alpine.
Renault.
Yeah. Come on. Yeah, it became Alpine. So it's Alpine now. That's what it is. It's Alpine. Stop it. It's the same team. But yeah, he ran to Renault so he could be the big dog. And let's be honest, it never worked.
Yeah, I think the best he got was he got a third place podium. And that was it.
Right. No, he won the race. He won the race. I thought he won the race because he won the Monza race with McLaren.
Yeah.
He got a podium with Renault, and then that's when Pitbull, whatever his name is, he got a tattoo of Danny Rick. And then he went to McLaren. Lando gave him that business and showed him, like, dude, you're not ready for this. Lando showed him, and Lando should have gotten that win. I'm gonna say that right now while we're on here. Lando should have gotten that win. But then it didn't work at McLaren. They let him go. Red Bull picked him up at a charity. Let's be honest. That's their guy. They all had some love affection with him. Picked him up. Unfortunately, Nick DeVries didn't work for him. So to his benefit, Danny Rick gets an Alpha. And it hasn't been what you would think it would be. Yeah,
Yuki's been wiping the floor with him, bro.
Right, and Yuki's been out here balling.
But Larson.
Yeah, Liam did pretty well.
Liam went,
Well, he didn't. I mean, they didn't race head to head, so I can't say. But I can say that Liam did better.
Result-wise. Yeah,
right, but Liam did well for a rookie coming in and driving at the spur of the moment. In a car that's not very fast. So. Right. I say that to say, Steven, he ran from fights. He's been removed from a team. He left Renault/Alpine when they were starting to get better, and they were ready to build around him. Now that we've got these series of events where Helmut Marko's talking about, man, if he don't perform over the next 2 races, we're going to put Liam in there. So with that being said, Steven, what's next for Danny? I don't think he is what people think he is, but what do you think?
I think at this point his time's come and gone.
Okay.
I mean I love Ricardo to death. I'm a Ricardo fan, but his time has come and passed, and I think it's time that Red Bull looks in the future and brings in somebody like Liam Lawson into that spot next year, or even hell, bring him in if you want to get rid of him in 2 races. Then do that, do something, because you got to get some sort of production out of it, and he's just not getting it done. Whether it be his time's over, he doesn't mesh with the car, because we've seen that before too.
Right.
What was it? Was it Gasly that they threw back down to back then Toro Rosso, and then that very next race he outdid Albon or whoever it was that they put in the spot. But I think it's one of those things where he capitalized when he needed to last year with getting back into that ride, got hurt, and then now he's back to playing this chasing game. And even against somebody like Yuki, I don't see him outperforming him.
Right. No, for sure. I totally agree.
I think that's where he's at right now.
Okay.
Yeah,
no, I
he's,
totally agree.
I don't know.
To be honest with you, I really, as Steven said, Ricardo that's it. He's just there for fun and games now. Make me laugh, Ricky. Make me laugh. His shooting time. You laughing? It's a serious. I'm being dead serious, man. There's nothing more for him to do. Just make us laugh, Ricky. Go drive the Red Bull car around a NASCAR or something, or race against some motorbike or whatever. Right. That's it. He's done.
Do some promotional stuff.
Because my thing is
sports car racing.
Yeah, he do something. Like even when Albon was out of F1, he drove DTMs for a year and he was doing pretty damn good.
Right.
You know what I mean? So like you said, do something else, bro. Shit. Seb is about to get into the freaking P2s. So do something. There's plenty of
test the porch.
There's plenty
he's testing GTPs. He's testing hypercars.
There's plenty other, because right now, because Giovanni, whatever you pronounce his name, freaking long-haired Jesus, used to be at Alfa
Giovinazzi.
Remember, he was at Daytona. You know what I'm saying?
He races in the WEC.
Is it Kvyat or the the one that messed up his hand. Oh God, what is his name? No, not Roman.
Roman. It is.
No, Roman burnt his hand. No, I'm talking about the guy whose hand was deformed because of a crash.
I'm talking about the Williams driver.
He's still racing, man. He's still doing his thing. You know what I'm saying? It's like, come on. Formula One maybe not be for you, because you got to think about this. He struggled. He struggled in, even though it was, like you said, it wasn't the fastest car in the world, but he struggled at Renault. He struggled at McLaren, and now he's struggling in this RB car. Correct. It's like, come on, man. That's three different cars.
Times. Yeah.
Figure it out, man.
That's 3 strikes, man. And at this point, I think what we're all saying is, Danny, you might be a good dude, and I might want to hang out with you, but then again, you extra dude. And I tell everybody, I don't hang out with extra dude. Why you sit down, man? We sitting here, we chilling, we watching the ball game. Why are you up doing all that? Sit down, man. Watch the game and shut up. Eat these wings and let's kick
Stop
it.
Stop twerking on the bar.
Exactly. This is not that kind of party. We're not here to do that.
Ass down.
Right. Exactly. Sit down somewhere.
Take several seats.
Exactly. So next, IndyCar. IndyCar had the most unique race on the face of the planet. Okay. IndyCar basically said, if you pay us enough money, we will let you host a race wherever you want. It won't count towards the points. It'll be a race structure that is completely unique. They haven't done heat racing since 2008 or something like that. Steven, if I'm not mistaken, I think they were saying during the broadcast. It's something ridiculous. They haven't done a heat race in a very long time, let's say that. This was hosted at a country club racetrack where rich people drive. And it seemed the whole race, they never said rich people. They leaned away from rich and wealthy. They never used those terms. But that's really what it was. It was a race for the rich and the wealthy. Now, I have not watched IndyCar as much as maybe some of you guys have, so I want you guys to chime in whatever order you so please. But what did you think of this very unique race that took place at a country club around rich people, not many fans, because not many people were invited in, and this format looked pretty promising, but early on, like, it wiped out, people got wiped out early in the race. They didn't have a chance. It's all about the almighty dollar.
Right.
$1.7 million was up for grabs between the drivers. It was the $1 million giveaway between first, second, and third. So what did you guys think of this race that took place in IndyCar?
Boring.
Boring? Why?
Because the format, especially with the feature, showed zero running in the beginning, right? I mean, you had guys dropping back just to save tires. As long as they stayed, I think it was 8 seconds off the leader, you weren't going to go lap down. So that was 10 laps out of a 20-lap race. So then you run a little 10-lap sprint at that point. You have your 10-minute, 10-minute break in between the two parts, and then you go back going. My opinion is screw the break. If you want to make anything interesting out of it, invert, say, the top 4, and then go from there. Top 4, top 6 out of that, invert them, and then let them run. But to me, I think the thought process was there, thinking they were going to make something out of it, but in my opinion, it didn't. It didn't produce like it probably could have.
Okay. So basically, just run a regular race, or at minimum, maybe use the NASCAR terminology where, we're going to do these other heats, but everybody else is still running with us. Because one of the things they did was they said, okay, it's just heat 1, it's just heat 2, and then the winners of those go on to the final heat, or to compete for the grand prize. As opposed to, no, everybody runs together, so you get a race. Maybe you don't count in the grand scheme of things towards winning the $1 million, but everybody's on track. Could there have been a format that worked better?
I don't know. I mean, it's hard saying because when's the last time they've ever done something like that?
Right.
The thing is it's you're and again we're talking open wheel racing. Like you do this, I think honestly you do the same thing in Formula One. You see the same type of thing because that's just how it would have panned out. Like if you knew that, hey, these first 10 laps, I just have to basically ride around and survive. Whatever,
save your tires.
That's what they're going to do.
Right.
Whereas, if you say, all right, if you're going to go, we're going to go, say, a 40-lap feature. You're going to run 20 laps. You're going to have basically, like a, quote, stage break. Invert so many of them out of that, and then let them run again and see what happens. Because you're guys that are sitting up front, and maybe you get somebody that plays the invert. Maybe somebody lucks out on the invert. Who knows? But it mixes up the field, and it may or may not promote more action throughout the field.
Or maybe do it like F2.
Yeah.
Do the sprint race, top 8 invert, and then you have your feature race. So, because it almost seemed like the format, because I'm watching Colton Herta, a guy I know who is supremely quick, just hang out at the back of the track. I'm like, what is he doing? And the whole time they were talking about, he's going to hang back there, stay within the 8 to 10 seconds or something like that. And he's just going to nurse his tires to get it to the end so that in the actual race, he's got plenty of grip to go. And it helps somewhat because I think he finished like P5 or something like that.
Yeah, he managed
P6. Yeah. But even then, he didn't win the money. You know what I mean? Because Palou just ran away with that in every outing he had. So could this format, could this be done in other series? Not the same format. Screw the format. But where money becomes the deciding factor, because we see it in F1. Like, let's not get it twisted. F1 races are all about the money. Show me the money, and we'll race in your country, no matter what you do to humanity. So clearly, it doesn't matter.
or what we do to the fans, circa Spa, rain out, 2 laps under safety car, get out of here, and
in Vegas. Like, remember what they did in Vegas this past year? Fans couldn't come into the practice session that they had paid for because of the mix-up with the track. So, you run into those issues with fans. But any other notes you guys noted from the IndyCar race? Because again, I thought that was interesting. Roman was pissed off. Like, that dude was heated. But again, money on the line, IndyCar drivers make sense.
Yeah.
Did
I mean,
he crash?
Yeah, he got wiped out in the first
Got
heat.
wiped out. Yeah, I'm like,
Yeah.
Lap one of the first heat, he got taken out.
I mean,
Yeah, he got hit in the back. And
I mean, I don't know how I feel about them, like, you know, basically putting a show on for rich people. Because, I mean, the whole point is that as a whole, just motorsport as a whole, not just Formula One, even though, you know, motorsport as a whole is expensive to get into. And if you want to continue to grow the sport, why would you basically just parade around a bunch of entitled people? You know what I'm saying? You're going to make somebody that's watching it who might have thought maybe one day I can be a, you know, a IndyCar racer, blah, blah, blah. And now they see this race with a whole bunch of rich people and, like I said, a crazy format. And, like, you might turn some people off on that kind of stuff, man.
right.
You know?
Well, and that's the thing, too. I mean, when you bring up the fans, IndyCar is always fighting for, you know, the exposure because you got F1 that holds the road racing in the United States, let's be honest, that's what they do. And then you got NASCAR. Well, then somewhere in the middle, you've got IndyCar. They run both road and oval, but you just, unfortunately, you know, there's a lot of times they'll run on the Sundays and they're competing with NASCAR. They'll go run on Peacock, and how do you get people into running that? And I know, like Connor Daly, he's a huge advocate. He was, you know, he's not running. He doesn't have a ride this year, but they have the Speed Street podcast with Dale Jr. Download, and they're always advocating about it. And that's one of the biggest things he asks is just how do you get, you know, week in and week out when IndyCar is running, you see it always. It's down, it's down, it's down. You go, and then you go on to, like, Peacock. Who wants to buy a subscription for it just to watch one race or two races, whatever?
Exactly.
Right.
Now, you'll have your diehard fans that are going to watch everything, right? But
So
I mean, for the people that are just kind of like, what is this? Who wants to go and do that?
Right.
Unless they ran on Saturdays. Because, I mean, you know, because the
Which
only
they do
thing...
sometimes.
Yeah, because the only thing, like I said, with Formula One, I mean, of course, you got your FP3 and then you got qualifying, but, you know, those are kind of split apart. They're kind of, you know, I don't know, should run the race between those two or something. I don't know, but maybe not having to compete against NASCAR or Formula One on Sunday. Plus, you know, depending on the time of year, you could be competing against, you know, football. Who knows? You know what I mean?
I think that,
so,
and that's the hard part, I think, with IndyCar is because a lot of times they end up, like at least last year, I think there was one or two races where they literally are racing the same time NASCAR's racing.
damn.
Right.
So, you know, you're not going to, everything always goes
can't
towards
compete with
NASCAR.
that.
Right.
No, you can't compete with that.
No.
So maybe
Well,
what
it's
they
like-
should do is essentially, like you said, run on a Saturday, stop the paywall. Like, not everything needs to be behind a paywall. I can watch an entire F1 race on ESPN with no commercials. Entire race. And if they do have a commercial, if anybody cuts to a commercial, what do? You get the race in the corner with the commercial here. So I still get to watch the race and see what's happening. And then maybe this ad is playing something about Coke or Pepsi or whatever nonsense. Whereas IndyCar and even IMSA, which I enjoy IMSA, but you cut away so many times for commercials, and then I miss a big accident, and now I got to watch it in replay. You know, because or I got to go behind a paywall and try and pay something, or use my VPN so that you think I'm in another country, so that I can watch it on IMSA without a commercial. So, like, we shouldn't have to in the U.S. of all markets, which is baffling to me, because F1 is not a U.S. sport. But they cater to our audience by saying, you know, we're going to give you this all uninterrupted FP1, FP2, FP3, sprint races, quality, race, all commercial free.
All of it commercial free.
Right. So for me, Americans can, you know, play 8 minutes of commercials beforehand. Hey, we're going to run extended commercials for the next 10 minutes. I can get up, I can go get something to eat, play that on the TV, I get some drink, I can go to the restroom, and then when I come back, I've got a race and I'm watching the entire race. Now, granted, if it is a 12-hour race, I get it. You're going to have to have intermission or commercial breaks. Totally makes sense. Because you got to market to get the money into the brand. But can I get long streams, long stretches?
Like,
maybe every 30 minutes you run a 2-minute, 3-minute commercial. I'm even cool the way IndyCar used to do it. Like, I haven't caught a race yet this year, so I got to start watching more of it. But I remember back in the day when they would do the picture-in-picture, it was an equal-size picture-in-picture. Mm-hmm. So literally the screen was just half race, half commercial. So like you said, so at least I'm sitting here, I can still watch what I'm not hearing a commentary, but I can at least still see what's happening. I can see if there's a great pass that happens. Like I said, if there's an accident that happens, but you're not left in the dark of like, okay, what just happened? I mean, we were gone for 3 minutes with commercials. They just, 2 laps went by. What happened? You know what I mean? Exactly. No, for sure. So, yeah, for sure. So, last but not least, before we get into the real crux of this podcast, NASCAR. What the off-track fiasco is that? As the NASCAR resident, Steven, what, like, hold on. Don't they have lines at Cota? I swore there are lines at Cota. So, Steven, you are the resident NASCAR expert here, so I'm going to lean to you. What the hell was that?
We run grass to grass. Forget the line. The only time the line matters is if it's a yellow line at Daytona or Talladega. It's the only time we care about.
Okay, because that was care. Not...
No, I mean it's ridiculous in my opinion. I mean, they got to do something. Put the sausage curbs up there. Yeah. I mean, do something to restrict them from using everything. It got to a point at one point they had to fill in holes because they were literally digging out grass and dirt in the corners.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's like I mean, I'm all for using the track up, but come on.
Yeah, like I said, I was watching the Haley Deegan video, and it was and they were showing her highlights of the race.
They do.
Yeah, but
Chase Elliott got one where he was trying to catch a car.
I mean, they were so egregious, even going through the S's, and I'm sitting here, in my brain, I'm sitting here thinking, shoot, in ACC, I'd have had a drive-through by now. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no. So I know. and we talked about inconsistencies with the FIA and NASCAR because they were the same way at Cota with the way they were handing out drive-throughs. Chase Elliott I believe he got a drive-through, and it wasn't because he missed the corner. He was literally sliding sideways through the corner, and after he recovered, lost whatever time he did, they gave him a drive-through on top of it. But then you're driving out there anyway. So what's your your criteria for your penalty?
That makes zero sense.
And the iRacing penalty, they said you've cut the corner. You need to get the time back. Slow down penalty.
Yeah. Listen, anybody that's ranked Cota and iRacing knows that they would have DQ'd that first lap with the way that they run the tracks. Let's be honest here, but I don't know. I get it. They want to let them run out, and IndyCar does the same thing when they run at certain tracks that like they run wide out like that, and nobody cares anything about it, right? But it's like these stock cars they have now are the closest thing to the sports car series. They can run inside the lines. Put the sausage cars back up and force them to stay inside of it.
Right. Either force them to stay inside of it, or make the penalties so egregious that you end up losing out so much.
Well,
that
one of the things they do at like Watkins Glen is if you blow the bus stop, you have to go. You take that access road. You have to come to a complete stop, and then you go. And
okay.
That's a lot of times that's a penalty they'll have. They did that with the Charlotte Roval. If you blew the chicane, you had to come to a complete stop before you took back off.
Yeah, do you think that's adequate enough to police NASCAR? Neil, you're just going to say something.
I think that's a brilliant. That's pretty smart. That's the iRacing penalty. It really is. You cut the course. That's like a 43-second. Because by the time you get back and get through the gears, that's a lot of time lost. It's a lot of time lost.
Yeah.
Well, and because you figure the time it takes you to get down, get that thing slowed down, come to a complete stop. Meeting on telemetry, it's showing 0 miles an hour, not 0.1. It's showing 0. And then to get back going, And it's not like you're just romping the throttle and you're going, because now you're roasting tires out of it.
Yeah.
Right. You got to slow it. Yeah.
It's a
No,
lot-
that's a long
It's a lot of
penalty. Yeah.
time.
Well,
Yeah.
like in,
A lot of
because I
time.
know, like in F1, like at Monza, we see people run, miss that first turn all the time, and they have to weave through those pylons to get through.
Yes.
And I'm sorry, as good as those F1 cars, they don't turn that nice. So
Right.
it's a pain for them to get through there. So yeah,
Right.
It's a time
Right.
killer for them when they do it.
Right.
So,
But like you said, it's meant to penalize you for cutting the corner. Don't
Exactly.
cut the damn corner. Like I guess, like Steven said, to go back to what you said, these dudes are professionals. Stay in the damn lines. Like, I'm not asking you to be so, stay in the line. Like, here's the limit. Stay in the limit.
yeah, as long
You're a
as you
professional
got
driver.
2 tires inside the line, I'm cool with that.
Right.
And
Now-
the thing is Cota's the only one that they really do that on, because Sonoma, you don't have that kind of room. Watkins Glen,
Right.
you don't have that kind of room.
Correct.
Road America, when they're running there, you don't have that kind of room. Chicago,
Correct.
you definitely don't have that kind of room.
Yeah.
But Cota, they have, there's all that runoff there, and a lot of that, is there to prevent anybody from getting in gravel and going screaming across the gravel like that. But,
Right.
they're going to take advantage every bit they can. Is it fast or not? Nah, it's up to opinion.
Right, because T1, let's be honest, I mean, I don't know what made... And these are not F1 cars with downforce.
Nope.
Taking the inside line on turn 1 at Cota is hard as hell to do in an F1 car. But I'm watching guys try and take that and cut that inside corner and go 3 wide. It's like, you're going to punt the car ahead of you, which happened a million times. It seemed like everybody's just, I'm gonna cut inside, I'm going to cut it off the corner because I'm No, it doesn't work.
No.
You don't have the kind of downforce to grip in that corner.
Not
You're
to
either running extremely wide or
not
you're
to-
punting the car on the inside.
Yeah, not to
Yeah.
mention your suspension is decompressing coming up
Correct.
that hill. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, what are you doing?
Right.
Right.
Which I don't get.
The thing is, like you mentioned about turn 1 at Cota, go back and watch the Indianapolis road course. When they ran
Yeah.
that, they take the green and they go like 5 wide, and they wonder why everybody's wrecking the crap out of each other going in turn 1. It's like,
Right.
because you give them literally all the way to the inside wall, they're going to use that.
Right.
Like if there's asphalt there, they're using it.
Right.
It's simple
And
as
which
that.
makes sense, though. You've pointed out, like in NASCAR, that is all about being on the margins. Like other series, yes, you race to the margins, but you can't always race it. Like you got to hit the apex, right? You got to. NASCAR is, especially on an oval track, get as close as you can, get bumper to bumper, ride that line as close as you can, and ride that like they say. And I think you said it before, Steven, because I'm new to NASCAR. If you ain't missing some paint on the right side, then you ain't driving. Because you're touching that wall, and the more you watch, the more you see that back bumper's getting touched and that right side's getting touched, because that's just the nature of the type of driver. So maybe that concept doesn't translate well, it seems, to road track. So, but last but not least, guys, like the best part of this podcast is we were all sim racers, and we're all doing endurance events, whether we're racing in ACC or racing in AC or Le Mans Ultimate or iRacing, or all these different ones. But the one we're going to talk about now is the iRacing 12-hour at Sebring. Okay? Crazy track, crazy nonsense. We've all run Sebring. We all love and hate it at the same time. And I'm going to lead this one to Steven, because you're going to take us out of here, because you ran the 12-hour. We did not have the
Watched him
pleasure.
run it.
I don't know Sebring that well. So.
Watched him run it. Tell the truth.
Yeah.
So, IMSA was at Sebring this weekend for the iRacing 12-hour. And as we know, it's a tough track. It's bumpy. It was raining for the first time in iRacing, where you had different elements coming at you. You had P2 cars that at points were faster than GTP cars, which that's a scary thing to see, where you're like, wow, this P2's running 155s and this GTP's running 156s, because it's wet now. And once the weather hits, the weather's a great equalizer. And then you've got the GT3 cars that they don't lose a lot of pace because, again, they can handle the rain better than that fast GTP. So, to take us out of here before we close out, I got to hear your take on how did the 12-hour, how did you feel it went? Where do you think it can get better from an iRacing perspective? Where do you think you did racing in it, and how much fun was it?
So, like you said, this is the first one that they have rain involved, right? And from what I watched of the iRacing official 12 hours, it started raining before the green flag came out.
Okay.
That very first session, I watched streams, and there were guys starting on dry tires, and before the pace lap was over, it was raining. They were all pitting on lap 1. My opinion, they forced it. I get it, though. It's because it's a new toy, so everybody wants to see the rain and this and that. They want to make sure it happens. So in a way, in my opinion, they kind of forced it. I think the forecast that you could see in there showed rain right out the gate, then it dry up, then another shot of rain, and then I think it dried up the rest of the way. I watched the top split, and I watched, those are supposed to be some of the best guys on the iRacing, and I watched GTPs wrecking each other before the race even started.
Oh, wow.
I forget who it was, but self-spun in the rain, and they got clobbered by another one. They were still in the pace lap.
Oh, wow.
So there was 2 GTPs out of top split that didn't even make the green flag. But I think in general, I think they've done a good job with it, with the way that it's implemented and comes in. We had the one team that ran, in the iRacing one, and then we ran, there was me and 2 others that ran in VSCA, which is an IMSA league. And they set their forecast within 5% plus or minus of what it was forecasted to rain. So they set it as close as they could to what you were going to get that day. It ended up raining somewhere at like the second half of the race is where it started raining. It rained just enough to get you borderline, put on wet tires, and then it dried up, and it was pretty much wet off the racing line the rest of the race. But I don't remember where the other team finished. I think they finished like 4th, 5th, something like that. I don't remember, but we're not going to go into too many detail about our race. It went really well until it didn't.
Until it didn't. Gotcha.
Honestly, where it's at. But
gotcha.
No, I think.
How did the car feel though, from a racing in the rain perspective? Again, we've tried it, but none of us have done that type of race. How does it feel to go from dry to wet to dry? iRacing spotter telling you the weather's coming, you being able to strategize around weather, because before, iRacing unfortunately doesn't have the best tire, data. Rude Boy, James know, and Natty know, jump into ACC or AMS2 if you want accurate tire telemetry and tire data in flat spots. Being that this is the great equalizer for iRacing folk to say, okay, iRacing, rain, it enters a different level because you don't have to worry about tires and pressure level, stuff like that. How do you feel the rain impacts endurance racing?
It's all about when to switch over.
Okay.
And right now, I think everybody's still kind of in that learning phase of how far can you take the tire, can you take the slick into the rain?
Right.
For us, we didn't have to worry about that necessarily because we had an incident right before the rain started. We came back out on a wet tire, and honestly, it probably wasn't ready for it. I could feel it in the fronts right away that it was kind of overheating them, and then when the run was done, the tire wear showed it. So right. I think it's one of those things. It's about finding that kind of that equal, that transition, that right switchover point. I mean, you see it in Formula One all the time, right? Mm-hmm. Figuring out when that rain's coming, when do you switch over, and I think that's part of it, because I think there was some guys that ran way late into the rain and almost borderline too late, and then you had others that swapped right away and then just burnt the tires off, so they're slow anyways. The biggest thing that I've kind of figured out when it comes to running in the rain is it's a dirt racer mentality.
Okay.
Because you're kind of staying off the racing line, staying off the rubber. It's just like when the track starts slicking up on dirt.
Told you,
You're
Ray.
staying off of that to maintain that grip.
This is why he was fit for it, because he understand that concept already. Because as I'm watching, I'm like, how the heck is this dude not sliding?
Right.
Minus when I went off the grass, went off in the grass and hit the invisible tire. Yeah, that was the thing. The broadcasters loved it because they didn't see me hit anything either.
But that's what I was telling you, Ray, about the staying off the racing line because, like I said, that's what we have to use in ACC. Because if you're on that racing line in the wets, bruh, it's not going to be a good day for you.
Well, and the other thing too is like, so one of the things that I had done was, because we use the Apex Racing setups, right? So they had a dry setup, they had a wet setup. We ran the 12-hour, which was the endurance dry setup. But what I did was went to the wet setup and looked at what the in-car settings were. So once we went to the wet tire, that's the settings that we put on the car.
Nice.
So the slip was different, the gain was different, the throttle module was different, all that was different. We put more brake to the rear, and I just kind of chugged around. I mean, that's really what it was. Never got more than 50% brake into it really at any time, and again, you stay off the racing line. The only time you're really on it is called when you're crossing the apex, and then you come off of it. You're almost running crossovers is what you're doing. The whole way.
Breaking earlier than usual, all the normal range stuff.
So like it almost sounds like what iRacing needs to do, because in many of these races you may have, how do I say this? If you're racing in a long race and you're racing with a team, you have somebody who could be your crew chief and make that change. So if I'm driving and I'm in a car and the rain starts and then I come into the pits and I change tires, Steven can set up and say, hey, we're going to change you to the wet setup. And you can make that change for me while I'm in the pits, if I'm not mistaken, because you're the crew chief. But what happens when you're racing in a single event?
The in-car setting, well, we're talking the in-car settings, the steering wheel settings. So nothing...
Gotcha.
Yeah, those are the settings.
We're not talking. I was wondering, like, because there are things that like an F1 or an IMSA, you come into the pits, they change some of the settings on the car that you can't change yourself, but the crew can change because they know, okay, we went from dry to wet, from wet to dry. We're going to give you a little more rear wing, a little more front wing, and make those minor adjustments, things like that. But just thinking,
because. Now, one thing, answer me this, because one thing, I'm not 100% versed on iRacing. Are you able to set up multiple pit strategies for your car? Like in ACC, we can have multiple pit strategies. So if I look and I see, okay, we might get rain in 30 minutes or whatever, I can sit as, all right, I'm going to start on my dries, but then I'll have, like, pit strategy number one will be, I'll put on dries, I got... blah, blah, blah. These are the brake pads I'm going to use, whatever.
Brake.
Then, exactly. But then if I go, then I'll have pit strategy number two. It'll be for wets. I'll have the certain pressures already done, the whole 9 yards. So then depending on when I come in, I can decide where I'm going to take strategy 1 or 2. And I can have, I forget how many, I don't even know how many daggone strategies we can have.
You have a whole lot, right? Whatever, 24 hours.
So I didn't know if iRacing had that ability or not.
So are we saying Ferrari plan B? Plan B? We're going to plan B?
Plan Z? No, what did you wait, Ray said we're going to plan Alpha. We don't
cycling around. We're coming back to AA. We're plan AB. Plan A, B, but seriously, like...
I mean, as far as strategy goes, I mean, that's something that we figure out. Like, it's not something that you'll lay out, but as far as, like, tire pressures go, I mean, for the most part, that's, at least in the LMP2s, that's the most, like, out-of-the-car adjustments you're doing.
Right.
I don't believe there's actually anything else. Everything else is an in-car adjustment, but, like, for the IndyCar, for example... You've got the tire pressures, the front wing, rear wing, you can adjust. Like, it really kind of depends on the car. But I believe out of all these sports cars, I don't think there's any adjustment other than basically tire pressures. Okay. And then your in-car settings.
Right, because the crew chief can adjust tire settings, fuel, some basic things. But in iRacing. So iRacing, if you ever see this video, hopefully you do. we need some actual real life crew chief settings. Like if it's a rain race or an endurance race, or I'm racing by myself, I need to go ahead. If you're gonna have weather, I need the ability to have a totally different setup for dry, for wet. So when I come into the pits, I can go into my black box. I can change it to wet setup 1 or wet setup 2 or whatever the case may be. Yes, it takes me longer to pit because, like in real life, I'm changing the characteristics of the car.
Right.
Somebody's making that change to some front wing, rear wing, things like that. So, but no, so that's the iRacing. So before we get off of here, because I'm not going to keep y'all for much longer, this is episode 1 of the Apex Reactions, brought to you, in the name brought to you by my guy Natty. He thought of the name. But Neil, how you want to take us out of here? With any closing remarks before we get up out of here for the night?
Yeah, man. You guys need to start looking out for them boys in F2. Those little young kids look really good. That's all I'm gonna say. I'm not gonna get into it. But Fittipaldi, even the guy that featured in Las Vegas, the young cat there, I can't remember his name right now.
Ollie Bierman.
Yeah. Yes. These young fellas are going to blow our minds when they come through the F1. If they get that opportunity to come to F1, these young cats are phenomenal. They can put in some work, man. They can race.
I agree with you.
I had a question for Steven. So, iRacing don't have, they don't give you the tire temps in the cars. You know, when you're looking at MFDs, they don't give you the tire temps or brake temps?
No. Actually, you don't get brake temps at all. So here's the thing, is iRacing doesn't give access to the tire telemetry.
Right. The only way you can see it is if you're in the car, in the game, and you have the dash visible.
Yep.
And that car just happens, like the Ferrari 296 and the Ferrari 488, on their dash in real time, you can see tire pressure and tire temperatures, but not like it doesn't share it, so you can't see it on your own dash or in the black box.
There is people that have made Motec workbooks that when they pull their telemetry into it, they can see every little bit of it. But you're talking post-race type stuff. But in race, the only time you're seeing wear or temps for the tires are at the pit stops.
Right.
And
I know you can't see the wear, but tire pressure, tire temp, and brake temp, those are some key stuff. You know what I mean?
If it is on the steering wheel, if it's on the displays in the car, you've got them.
Yeah.
But if
that's
not,
the only way.
You got nothing.
Yeah. Wow. And it's because, and here's the thing, I will say this, it doesn't matter. Because iRacing, that element in iRacing is not as important as it is in...
I'm sorry.
Which is interesting.
I would say the pressures is important. The heat is. The heat is where it throws off, because go into one of the cup cars. As soon as you get that right front hot, you're going to burn off. Like when you run at Richmond, you're going to burn that thing off.
It matters, but not to the level it matters in your ACCs and your AMS2s, where not only does the heat matter, but as that tire starts to wear down, which you get in iRacing, but like you don't get flat spots. So like the fact that from lap 1 to the end of your stint, you've got people running similar times, unless there are cars in front of them.
Okay.
If you're doing a complete stint in an iRacing race, you will typically have similar times. Or in real life, or in other sims, you'll start to see it dip because those tires wear and they start to fall off a cliff. So that's where I think iRacing can get better. So, with that being said, guys, this is our first episode. Hopefully, we've got more to come for everybody else. If you guys out there like this, you're going to see this first episode feature on Grayze Dynamics, but it's also going to be on the channel for Apex Reactions at Apex Reactions. So, by all means, if you like what we bring to the table, if you have insight, ideas, if you just want to comment and clown us for wearing something silly, go ahead. We can take a joke. But as always, man, thanks for tuning in. Thanks for checking us out. Of course, thumbs up, notifications on, subscribe to the channel. And I'm going to say peace. And they going to say whatever they going to say, but I'm going to say peace, because I'm going to say see you later.
Stay blessed. Stay blessed.
Yep. Later on.
Later.